Hello and welcome to the lecture on files. Let's understand how to work with directories. So if you go to the files folder, example 1, open up the working with directories folder. Let's understand the logical flow of example. So we have 5 examples. The first example is we'll list all the files in a directory. Okay, we'll place some files in a directory and then we'll try to write a program to list all the files from the directory. Then we'll check for a specific file whether the file exists or not in the directory. Then we'll check if the name of a directory is basically a file or basically it's a directory. Then we'll create a directory. Then we'll copy files between the directories. Okay, so part of this will create the deliverable file which is file directories.php. So let's create this file. So I'll create a folder called files. So I'm in the www folder. Here I'm creating a folder called files. And inside this I'll be storing all the files now. So let's paste our examples. Okay, so let's do a sample one. List all files in a directory. So the method is called as scan_dir. Okay, so we'll call this method to check what are the files in a directory. Okay, so let's define a variable and we'll say we'll hold the folder path here and we'll say test folder 1. We'll create this folder manually and place some files and see whether we are able to access that file or not. Okay, we'll say result and we'll use that command scan_dir and you have to pass in a directory path. So we have the path already here, and then we will try to do a var dump first. Then we'll try to iterate it and see what are the values in that result. So for that we will go to files folder and we'll create a folder which is similar to what we have used in the program. Okay, and we'll copy this file and paste it here. Okay, we'll create one more file here. Okay, now I'll run this program to see whether we are able to read the files from this folder, test folder 1, because our file is here. We are trying to read files from test folder 1. So there are 2 files, so we should be able to see 2 files in the output. So let's go to files. Okay, so now if you look at the array, so that's basically converted into an array. So scan_dir will convert result as an array. That array is stored in $result. Okay, and if you look at the array, you have 4 elements, and first 2 elements basically are the dot and 2 dots. That's basically to go back, and then the second and the third are the most important ones. So that's basically your file name, that is dummy.txt. Let's open up that folder. Yeah, and then the file directories.php. So it's able to iterate the files from that folder. So remember, when you iterate you always get this single dot and double dot. Okay, so let's little bit understand about these dots. So you typically have this something called as dot. Okay, and if when you are iterating that, you can choose to ignore this 2 dots like single dot and double dot, so that when you print the output you don't print the dots. Okay, so let's do that. So let's write a for each loop. And we can say $dir. Okay, now we can say if $dir is equal to dot and not equal to double dots. Okay, so we'll take out the comments for path. Let's run our program. Okay, so we have an array, but we skipped dot and single dot and double dots, and then we are printing the file names now. So these are the file names that's available in the folder now. So if you create a new file and just run our program, then it's able to access those files. Okay, so scandir is a function using which you can list all the files in a directory. There's another way to remove that dot and dot dot. I'll give you a very simple and easy method. So let's say you have a directory variable, you can do an array diff and you can pass in your actual array, and now you can say I want to find the differences, means I want to escape this. The array differences will find the differences. So if this is available, it will skip this, and whatever is not available here will be copied over to directory. So it will skip the dot and double dots. And if you do a var dump of directory, so without even checking the if conditions, you can actually remove from that array itself. And if you want to do an for each on the directory, then you don't need these conditions. Okay, so you're able to print the file names without that dot dot. Okay, so let's look at sample 2 and 3. Sample 2 and 3 is check the specific file and directory and check if a name, that file name is a directory or a file. Okay, so I'm going to copy over this 2 lines here so we understand what we are doing. And there are 2 methods for it. One is to check is file or is dir. This is to check whether the file name that you get, the dir that you get, is to check whether it's a file or a directory. Okay, so now you're gonna copy paste the we copy paste the code here, and then the path we are saying it is test folder 1, right? And then we are trying to remove all the dots from here. Obviously, maybe what we can do is we can use this and then we can remove the dots. So now you can actually check whether the returned value is a folder or a file. Okay, if you say is file, okay, so is file is a method using which you can check whether the file is a file or a directory. For that you have to pass the path first, because you're checking inside that directory, and then you have to pass in the slash, right? You need to check whether the file is inside that folder. So now you can say $dir, right? So this is basically checking the folder name slash the file, and you're checking that value is a folder again or a file. Okay, so I'll create one more folder here, 1, 2, right? So we'll see whether the 1 and 2 is get printed or not, or only the file names get printed. Okay, so let's run that, and if you see only the file names get printed, but if you see it here, all the iteration of the directory, you have 1 and 2 as well, because the directory iteration will iterate all the directories as well. It doesn't care whether it's file or directory. But when you want to just show the file names, show the specific file name in a directory, then you are just iterating the file from the directory and you're checking it is a file or not, right? And if you only want to iterate the directories, you can say directory, then it will only show the directories for you. Okay, so let's create a directory now. Okay, this is another sample, create directory. This is sample 4. So let's create a variable result is equal to, I want to show you a method called glob. Okay, using glob you can find all the path names for a given pattern. Okay, when I say path names, let's say, let's clear this out. Okay, typically when you want to find a file, you can say asterisk.php, and you're just iterating the path names, right? This is a path name. Okay, it's like executing a dir and try to figure out what is inside that. So you can say test folder 1, then you say dir, and only I want to see asterisk, you say .txt. Okay, the glob can be used to do the dir function and check all the paths and path name based on the patterns that you can provide to it. Okay, a simple example will be if you want to check asterisk.php. Okay, then it will tell you what are the files available for asterisk.php. Obviously it will not be in test folder, it will be here. So it's actually doing this. Okay, then you will find files directory.php. So let's print that. So we do a var dump of a result, then we'll run a program. Okay, so it's getting that file name. So this is one of the easiest way also, instead of iterating all the folders and and checking whether it's folder or file and everything, there's another easiest way. That's this method called glob. This is basically a dir function kind of thing, wherein you can pass in the pattern and then you can actually get those specific files. Okay, so let's create a folder. So before creating a folder, we have to check whether the folder exists or not. Okay, and then we can issue the command to create the folder. So how do you check whether the folder exists or not? You can say file exist, and then you can specify the folder name. So you can say test folder 3, and now to create the folder you can say mkdir. That's a method given for us, and then you can specify the folder name. Okay, so let's clear this and say dir. So there's no folder called test folder 3. So when we run this program and say dir, you will see test folder 3. Okay, so let's look at the folders here. Okay, I'm going to delete this folder. Okay, and this program is basically creating the test3 folder. So we're going to run this program. Okay, and the folder will appear here. Okay, so that's the command to create a folder. And how do you copy files? So there's no files in it, but we want to copy files from test folder 1 to test folder 3. Okay, so there's a method called copy, as simple as that. To copy files, we can simply pass the source and the target, and the files will get copied over. So our source is test folder 1, and we can say you can take any file from that folder. Let's say this file, and we can actually change the file name as well. We'll change it to 3. Okay, and then we'll issue that command. So before issuing that command, we'll try to verify it. There is no file here. Let's issue our command, and the file will appear here with a different file name as well. So you're able to copy the file and you're able to change the file name as well. Okay, let's do a quick review on what we have learned. To copy a file, you can use the copy command. To create a directory, you can use mkdir. To check a folder exists or not, or file exists or not, you can use file_exist. If it exists, it will be true, or else it will be false. Glob is a method using which you can find all the path names for the given pattern. And then array difference, we have seen to remove all the differences, that is the dot and the double dots. Then isdir and is_file are the functions which is used to check whether it is a directory or a file. Then we have used scandir to scan that path, and it will scan for the folders, files and everything. Okay, so by now you should be able to know how to list all the files in a directory, check for specific files, check if a given name is a directory or a file, create a directory and copy files between the directories. Okay, so do this exercise, do this hands-on and understand how to work with files and directories, because this is one of the very important concepts in PHP. Okay, so that's all in the lecture for file directories, and I'll see you in the next one.